All right, we're going to do a quick episode here. Be the boss of your money. We'll talk real quick about the markets. Why did the stock market have such a good day today? Um, let's see. I'll start by saying this a couple weeks ago, about a week ago. Okay, about a week ago. I warned viewers to not get so caught up in tariff talk and what if something goes right. What if the tariffs work? What if they're pulled back? What if Trump backs off? And I talked another episode that when Trump stops talking tough about tariffs, stocks rally. We were having a really good rally in the market from last year until early this year, especially after President Trump won the election, and then after the inauguration. It turned around very quickly because of tariff talk, because of what that would do to the economy. And it was corroborated by much lower consumer confidence. Companies like Walmart and Amazon, the biggest retailers in the world, talked about how things would slow down and consumers are pulling back. Lots of negative news coming out in the background and lots of pressure from businesses. CEO of General Motors, of Ford, tariffs against Canada would be horrible for the American auto industry. They would be horrible for everything throughout the economy. Same on Mexico. I could understand if you want to put tough tariffs on China because you want production to move to North America. Specifically, though, if you want it to move to the United States, um, we don't really. It takes a long time for trade policies to change. It takes a long time to build factories, and the fact is, nobody wanted to do anything as far as building factories. Everything was kind of on a standstill globally with corporations in terms of building factories or deciding where they want to produce. The reason for that is because they just didn't know where they would produce. So let's just roll a quick intro. I like to roll my intro like when I'm well into the show. So we'll wrap this up in a minute. Here we go. All right, thanks for joining me. So today it looks like it was getting close to Trump caving on tariffs, and he did it today, where he came out and said, well, maybe we'll have flexibility. We won't view every country the same with regards to reciprocal tariffs. We're going to exclude certain sectors like automobiles and pharmaceuticals and other sectors. So basically, very watered down after a lot of tough talk that, quite frankly, I don't think was well thought out. It's just off the cuff. Oh, yeah, well, we're going to do a 25% tariff. Oh, you're going to retaliate? Now we're doing 50%. Like, he didn't talk to anybody in his cabinet or put any consideration. These are just, you know, uh, these are just tough talking points. But it was driving investors crazy. It was driving consumers crazy. It was driving businesses crazy, global corporations. And when that happens, uncertainty reaches a peak. The global economy starts to grind to a halt. But the bottom line is tariffs are bad for the United States. They're not good. They could be worse for other countries than they are for the United States. But that doesn't mean it's good for us because it's relatively worse for someone else. And economic realities came around, and I guess businesses spoke up and bent the ear of Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary who's leading the charge on tariffs, and said, this is no good. We can't do this. You're going to really just crush the overall economy. If you want to incentivize companies to manufacture and build new plants here in the United States, great. I'm all for it. It takes a very long time for that to happen. It takes a really long time. It doesn't just happen overnight. So you're just raising prices with tariffs with no benefit to the United States. And if you do have a big tariff, the ones that Trump was talking about, you're talking about probably the biggest tax hike ever, because tariffs are a tax on American consumers and businesses. And I don't think Trump wants to be known for a tax raiser. He wants to be known for being a tax cutter. So I think he was hoping that big tariffs would help make up for big tax cuts. Kind of you know a, a a budget neutral way to go about it. But reality hits, and it just didn't work. The numbers just weren't going to work. So he backs off. Like I said last week, I said this in an episode: when Trump stops talking tough about tariffs, markets rally. And he basically caved today, and stocks rallied pretty heavy. Um, by the time your March statement comes out for your brokerage accounts, for your IRAs, for your 401ks, you're barely going to notice that the market was down this month. I mean, that's how much ground has been made up between today and the last couple of days. It was a slightly up week last week and a big update today. But I'm looking at a lot of tech stocks are up $8, $10 a share. That's a lot of ground made up. Granted, a lot of stocks are not to where they were, a month and a half, 2 months ago, but a lot of ground has been made up. And I think when you get your March statement, you're going to say, well, you know what? Much ado about nothing, which is why myself, Bobby, and Andrew here, we all push for long-term investing. Don't make decisions based on short-term geopolitical events. We always say that because they unwind, and then we get back to doing business. Some companies, like Hyundai, announced today that they're going to put up a $20 billion manufacturing plant in the United States. Keep in mind, a lot of these companies were already committed to opening up plants in the United States. During Trump's first term, there were companies that said they were going to do that. They wound up not doing it. And I think a lot of companies could make the announcement that they're going to open up a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing facility or something here in the United States. But, they take 2 years. They take 2 years to plan it, to get it together, to get sketches on a drawing board, to get the blueprints ready. But it gives them 2 years to see if, tariffs turn around. Because if you're going to build here because of tariffs and then the tariffs go away, what you're doing is you're building a very big, expensive plant in the United States that costs too much to operate, and you can't make a profit turning products out of it, and it becomes just a white elephant in your balance sheet. So companies are announcing that they're putting down concrete here in the United States, but I don't know. I'm not confident that they're all going to actually do it, because if the tariffs do go away, a lot of them are going to pull back on that anyway. If the tariffs stay, they'll just keep saying they're going to build, they're going to build, they're going to build, but they may never get to it. Maybe they're just going to hope for a reversal in policy or new leadership in Washington. So it's hard to believe anything that these companies are going to say. Well, I don't want to come off as a total skeptic. I just think the companies that make big announcements, they have years to make their decisions. They make the announcement, but they're not obligated to do it. It's just a nice soundbite and gets them on the good graces of President Trump. He wants some victories to hail. I don't know, again, these companies don't always follow through on their building plans. So we'll see. But that's really the story of the day. If you could upgrade economic growth for the rest of this year because tariffs won't be so bad, that kind of, to me, puts in a rest the correction in the market and a lot of negativity at the economy. There will be long-term ramifications. I hope Trump got the message that a lot of our trading partners are going to form stronger alliances with our other trading partners like Canada and the EU, Mexico and the EU. All right. Those are going to become much bigger, much more important trading blocks. And they're all going to do that at the detriment of the United States, because the United States it's not really a trusted partner. And when the United States starts saying, we're going to take over Canada, we're going to take over Greenland, that's very imperialistic, and nobody wants that. Putin said that he took Crimea back and he's taking Ukraine back because they were part of Russia a long time ago. President Trump said that Canada was supposed to be the 51st state, so therefore we really own it. We're just going back to taking what was ours from 200 years ago. It's the same playbook. Nobody wants it, and as a result, our allies do not see the United States as a trusted partner. Even if we had new leadership in Washington, as long as that kind of leadership is always present and can come back, we have lost confidence from our partners in terms of business, intelligence, military. You saw a number of Canada, for example, cancel contracts to buy lots of F-35s because they'd rather go with other countries. Keep in mind the F-35, it's locked down every night. And the only way you could turn on the F-35 is if the Defense Department turns them back on every morning. That has to happen. The only country that has F-35s that doesn't have that is England. But everyone else, they buy F-35s, they can't turn them on without a signal from the U.S. Defense Department. So if you buy lots of equipment from the U.S., military equipment, and you have a spat with the U.S., the U.S. could just turn it off and make that equipment useless. No country wants to get involved with that now that the U.S. isn't really trusted. You never know. President Trump could next month say tariffs are back on and we're going to take over Canada and Greenland and go to war with Canada and go to war with Denmark. And, nobody wants this. But when he backs off, it is good for markets. It is better for confidence for consumers and businesses, and the beat goes on. We do have a trade deficit, but when you look at services, our exports are software and services. And that typically happens in developed nations. Software and services, legal services, entertainment, those become a greater portion of our exports. I don't think roughly about 8% of all jobs in the United States come from manufacturing. If you want that to go up to like 40 or 50% like 100 years ago, that's not an easy thing to do. But advanced societies typically rely on partners to do the cheap manufacturing, and we develop the intellectual capital to design the manufacturing. That's exactly what Apple did, right? So we'll see what the days coming up bring, but Trump has really backed off on the tough tariff talk. And now when he flips back and forth, he's lost credibility as far as a trade negotiator. Because he's lost trust. It's a good trade negotiator. Any negotiator develops trust with the people they're negotiating with. The people might not like that person, but they know if that person says they're going to do what they're going to do, that actually builds trust. So if you're going to say one thing and say another and go back and forth, it's it's not a way to negotiate, and people will just ignore it and say we'll build better and stronger business alliances with other powers, and the United States will be left out. I do feel that these repercussions will be felt for a generation, and I think that's very unfortunate, especially when we need to focus on things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the budget. There's so many big things that we need to do. Maybe tariffs were thought of as an easy win and tough trade talk, but President Trump said in his inauguration speech, are we going to tariff other countries to enrich America? But it turns out he got the message that does not enrich America. It does not enrich our trading partners and our adversaries. It just makes everybody a little poorer and slows down business globally. All right. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. You guys have a good day, and hopefully we'll have another good day in the market tomorrow. But whatever it is, it's not the market that counts. It's you who counts all the time. I have to come up with a better tagline. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Think about it.